Hey, how is everybody today? I am back again with you guys, and it has been a minute since we have talked. However, doesn't mean that I have been busy not doing anything at all, busy doing nothing. Just means that I've got other things that are going on. And unfortunately, those things sometimes involve traveling. So I've kind of taken a break away from all this stuff called life and been doing a little traveling, and I've had a wonderful time. And now I'm back in saddle and back in pocket. And I want to tell you guys, since we last talked, you know something? It's really amazing how you guys just, it's just, I don't know. All I can tell you is thank you. I talked to you guys about, trying to reach the 3,500 mark. And last time I talked to you guys, I was telling you all that I reached that and surpassed it. This time I'm talking to you guys and y'all done put me over 4,000. 4,000 subscribers. As I've said before, thank you guys. I appreciate it. Well and very much appreciate it because, I keep telling you guys, but at the end of the day, it's all about growth. So thank you. You guys, keep shooting them subscribers at me. Bang, bang, bang. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Keep shooting them subscribers at me. I appreciate y'all. Anyway, I'm back in the saddle, back in the pocket. And the last time we talked, we were talking about deceptive and lying pastors. Do you have one? Yeah, that got pretty deep. And, there's some things that we're going to continue talking about. Today's topic, I want it to be more around, again, it's going to be on the same, topic regarding, deceptive and lying pastors. But today I want to focus more on a topic of what's going on with individuals who seemingly have been in abusive relationships. And the things that I'm talking about today, not necessarily are just, streamlined to a pastor-member relationship. It could be in a personal relationship, sometimes, friendships, family members, marriages. This really touches, all facets of all kind of relationships, regardless of what that relationship status is with you. But for the sake of the topic, we are talking about, and let's not get it twisted, we are talking about deceptive pastors, lying pastors. And we're going to kind of tie that into today's topic regarding how it is that the mindset of individuals in the abuse, and what I call stealth abuse, stealth spiritual abuse to be exact, how that is accomplished in these institutions called churches. Okay, so we're going to dive a little deep on that today. In the last video, I was talking about the members. I pretty much focused and pretty much put my points directed at the members. And I did that because, oftentimes in these churches, these pastors, we look at them and of course, they're not, totally without any responsibility in this equation and how this abuse is pulled off. But I focused on some of the members and how you all as members have allowed these things to happen. And a lot of what I touched on in the last video, I really did not, go into specifics of, naming things. But, a lot of what I, kind of referred to in terms of the attitudes and the different responses from the members is what's called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is it's often, when you look at it for what it is, it's really just you're in conflict about things that or your belief system has you in conflict about things that you see that challenge your belief system. In other words, you may know that, fast food is bad for you. However, that cognitive dissonance in you will tell you, even though I know that's my belief system. I know that, and I'm not going to label, specific fast food, chains. This is no, sham or, trying to throw off on anybody's specific food choices. That's your business. But you may know and have a certain food that you deem or classify as being bad for you. However, that is your belief, yet it does not stop you from going to that establishment and getting that food, ordering it, and eating it. Okay? That's cognitive dissonance. You're conflicted. You know that this food is bad for you. However, you continue to go to this fast food or that establishment, get this food, and somehow in your mind you justify to say, well, I only eat it once a week, or I only eat it once a month. So, you rationalize in your mind and you battle what you already know. Cognitive dissonance. We're going to talk about how that is pretty much in the members and the mindset in the church, and how this has basically been the norm. Okay? I talked about in the last video how sometimes we can know things. And for instance, cognitive dissonance, you get information, or you have information that challenges your belief system. Sometimes it's new information and it challenges your belief system. What are you talking about? Well, let's just say that, you have suspected, or maybe you have felt certain things that challenge your belief. However, somehow or another, we can look at evidence and we can look at things that contradict what we believe, see things in action, see how things go that contradict what we believe. For instance, you may feel that, I believe that, all men are created equal, and people should have equal rights, and people should have, fair treatment. And yet you see, the pastor do one brother or one sister a certain way that you yourself, you wouldn't even basically agree with and wouldn't accept that your own self. However, you won't say anything. That belief system in you knows that, yeah, it's wrong. I know it's wrong to be treated unfairly. I know it's wrong to be treated, indifferent, or to be prejudiced against other individuals. And prejudice doesn't necessarily mean that I'm talking about black and white. It could just simply mean that you're treating one individual. It's called respect of persons, to just label it in layman's terms. Respect of persons. Now, you yourself, you wouldn't, deal with that. But you watch this injustice and you watch these things happen in a church setting, and, you are conflicted. Why are you conflicted? You're conflicted because you know what you see is unfair. You know it's something that you yourself would not deal with. However, when it comes to seeing this information or this treatment that's being, pushed on someone else, we won't say anything. We'll often rationalize it in our heads and say, well, I touched on some of this in the last video. Well, the unfair treatment of this member, it's unfair. Yeah, I agree that wasn't done right. But because it's a pastoral issue, I won't touch it, or I won't say anything about it because, my belief system has told me, or I've been taught to believe that if I say or point to the injustice or the wrong, that somehow that equates and it has basically put me in the category of the red zone with God. God gonna get me. He gonna chastise me because, here we go. I've spoken to something that was dead wrong, or I've raised my hand and I've questioned something that was inconsistent with my belief system. But instead of you doing that, no, we won't do that. We'll make it okay. We'll find it in ourselves and we'll find it in our heads to say, well, I don't know everything that's going on, and perhaps maybe the pastor has some information that I don't have, and you know what, I'm not going to challenge and or say anything about what he talked about because, that'll get me in trouble. And you know what, I'm just going to be and stay in my place and be the good member that, I came and joined into this organization and pretty much said that I would be. So we won't say anything. It's amazing how cognitive dissonance affects people. And that you will know and you can receive what I call unrefutable facts about things. Sometimes it can be shown to you, and sometimes we don't want to see it. You know why? Because as I have alluded in the past videos, Sometimes I think the shock factor of seeing something or someone for who they really are. In our minds, we can't digest that. We can't compute that to say, wow, all this time and all these years I have been following something or someone, and come to find out that what I thought I was following, who I thought I was following, was something that was a figment of my imagination. That goes back to using holiness as a means to basically keep yourself cloaked from all of the real stuff that you really are about, cloaked from all of the downright devilish things that you have done in your past, cloaked from basically functioning and using the church as your front to pull off all of these ungodly things. Well, we don't want to see that. We don't. Because that would upset and it would overthrow our faith. Why is it that your faith, number one, is so rooted in a man to the point that if you see this man fail, or if you know that this man has been a failure, or that he has operated under the guise of, mischievousness and what I call deceit, that somehow we don't want to see that. We'd rather have in our minds, this godly angelic figure that, preaches and teaches the word of God with such preciseness. And, surely nobody can preach or teach like, this unless they were of God. Well, you need to re-examine that. God, in his great wisdom, did not put some restriction on devils that they could not teach or preach the word of God. It's not like they don't have access to the same Bible that the saved and sanctified and Holy Ghost filled preacher has. They have access to the same book. But somehow or another, we feel that because somebody preaches and or teaches that, a certain way that, they must be of God. That is the most and single most biggest deception that I think the enemy has used with you members that feel like, well, my pastor is a man of God. He's, apostle. He's a bishop. And, surely if he was doing all the wrong things that, basically that are being said, then God would have taken him away a long time ago. You got that wrong too. See, let me tell you something. God has his own appointed time for man. Every man has a designated time. And you're not wise enough, you're not smart enough to understand the mindset of God of why, why some people who do all the wrong in the world, and typically you see this happen and play out this way. Why some people who can do anything and everything, it apparently seems like they get away with everything in life. Those people, they stick around for years and years and years. Then someone that you see is good and wholesome, and they're basically doing all the things they need to do and trying to help mankind and basically living a life that's, free from all this, chaos and sinful nature. And, and we see these people, and seemingly it looks like that there's unfair treatment by God because these people, seem to leave the scene before the ones who can do anything and everything to people. You can't question the mindset of God. We don't know why that is. We don't understand why God does things and who he decides to keep here and how long he decides to keep them here. That's not for you. It's not for me to judge. However, you cannot take that and use that alone to say that, well, somebody must be godly because they're still around. You can't go by that either. See, Satan has an appointed time. He has instruments on this earth. He has individuals. He has preachers that are here to basically try, and I did say try because, if it was possible, he would, fool the very elect as well. Those that have been chosen, those that have been chosen of God, he would deceive those individuals as well. However, he has appointed an appointed time, a designated time, and he knows that. He knows that time is running out. And so he's not restricted to the doors outside of the church, the environment outside of the church. He's not restricted to doing things and basically all the things that we see that go outside, go on outside of the doors of the church, that is basically his area, and then the church, he basically is restricted from that. No, he has not designated just the world basically to go on ahead and pull off his whatever he's doing. He stepped right into the church, and oftentimes we invite him in. There are so many windows and so many cracks in the church nowadays. Satan doesn't have to break in. We let him in willingly. We let him in willingly. So don't blame God for that. Don't blame God for the deception. You deceived your own self. Why did you deceive yourself? Because you took upon yourself, I guess, the belief system that this man of God, of whom you claim is a man of God, has basically been living this for the entire time that you've known him. And, in the shadows and in the dark, history of the church, oftentimes, if you take a look at it, you probably wouldn't be able to handle what you know. What you thought you knew, for that matter. So, cognitive dissonance, sometimes we can get information, it's new information, we don't want to know it. We don't want to know it because it will challenge our beliefs. So we get comfortable. I talked about a lot of this stuff. We get comfortable in the notion that, as long as the pastor doesn't bother me, he's not rebuking me or he's not, getting up and preaching about me, and I'm functioning, I don't have any problems with him, then, I don't really care what the pastor does. He can do whatever he wants to do because, God gonna deal with him. And so we justify ourselves, and we know that the man is an abuser. On some levels, we can feel it. We don't always know, and we can't always point to what it is, but there's something in us that we feel and we know. Sometimes it's just that uncertainty of certain things that are done, contradictions. Sometimes you hear things, it's like a person that's, double-minded. They say one thing one time, and then the next time you hear them talking on the issue, they say a different thing. But see, those are little, as you call, excerpts into God showing you things. He's allowing you to see those inconsistencies, allowing you to see an individual talk out both sides of their mouths because he wants you to see the inconsistency in that God himself is not the author of confusion. Therefore, he is not going to allow someone to basically function in the capacity of a position as a pastor and have him contradicting himself. But you'll see a lot of this stuff. Sometimes you won't say anything, more often than none. A lot of times you won't say anything because, again, we've been programmed to feel like, it's not my place to say or do anything because I'm not a pastor, therefore I don't have the right, or I don't have... What is democracy? I mean, we have elections. You go down to, your, designated spot for you to vote, and you basically place your vote for whoever it is that you want to be in office. You have that, and that's given to you as just a citizen of the United States of America. However, in church, where you basically have become a member and you pay your tithes, your offering, you utilize your love, your time, your efforts, your strength, all of this is going to a building and a pastor. And yet when it comes down to, having the democracy to speak up on things that you see that are wrong, we get quiet. We don't utilize that option. But then when you're told, when you join, that, you have all members just like everybody else, and you free to do this and do that, and, everything that's within the organization is pretty much open to you. But somehow when it comes to questioning your pastor, went a little bit too far, buddy. Nah, can't do that. You can pay your money here. Yes, you can do that. You can function in the capacity of an office, or sometimes many offices. And we can utilize you, and we can basically, take your talent and utilize you and use you up to the last and very last drop, as they say. We can get all that out of you, but, and we'll continue to do that as long as you are following the system. And if you decide there's something that is inconsistent, you keep your mouth shut. You don't say anything. Well, a lot of members have accepted that as being the norm. See, an abuser is not... I touched on this. We often think of abuse as physical. Sometimes in established churches, you will find that there is a spiritual abusive system in place, and people are afraid to speak up about things oftentimes because they're afraid of, somehow they'll get in trouble with, the pastor, or they don't want to get any type of attention drawn to themselves. or they don't want to be shunned or shysted by the other members. See, when you often take a stand for something, I don't care. If it's something that's right, I don't care if you're the only one taking the stand. A lot of times we back away from that stand because, we'd much rather feel comfortable being a part of a collective than to stand out and be alone and be seen by the collective as problematic. So we won't do anything. We won't say nothing. So what you end up having is what I call Stockholm Syndrome. And for those that don't know what that is, that's simply you have become, enamored. You take such a liking and a loving for the one who's abusing you. And then when those like the police and people that are there to help you and authority figures that come in to help you and show you these things, you get mad at them for trying to show you the truth. Why? I'll tell you why. Goes back to cognitive dissonance. It challenges your belief system. You got new information that challenges what you know and what you believe all these years. So you dare not tamper with that. You dare not touch that because, that's taboo. So you won't say anything. See, that Stockholm Syndrome will basically have you acting a fool for somebody who's a devil. Isn't that amazing how your mind can be flipped? A switch can be flipped and you can be abused by somebody being abused, and you'll actually fight in their defense and get mad at the individual or individuals that are trying to help you to see the abuse for what it is. You think this is just natural speaking? No, this happens spiritually in the church. I'll just label it myself. It's not a title, but I'm going to call it spiritual Stockholm Syndrome. You love that pastor that you know. And sometimes you don't know, but then sometimes you see and you got enough to know that something's not right. There's inconsistencies there. So you got what I deem spiritual Stockholm Syndrome. You love this pastor so, love it, and it is such he has such a grip on you and has such a grip on your mindset that you will not see anything that paints or polishes a picture other than, next to God himself is Jesus Christ and then your pastor. This man could have been a murderer. This man could have been, God knows, you name it. You put the title to it. But we don't want to see that. I talked about that in the last video. We want so bad to have a hero. We want so bad to have a champion. Somebody that's got a record, a winning record. See, nobody likes to follow a dud. We all like to follow a stud, figuratively speaking. So we don't want to hear about the failures. But isn't it ironic that, the same man that you refuse to see anything bad about, and I did say refuse, it's not that you don't want to know, we just refuse to know. We'll sit and listen to this same man talk about and point out other people's faults and or problems with no problem at all. We open our ears wide for that. Yes, we always want to hear other people's junk and hear about what other people are doing. And half the time, more often than none, and I talked about this, we can't even substantiate and we can't even put to the table whether the things that's being said and what we listen to is even facts. We just jump on board because the influential nature of the person that's speaking to us, pastor, it's got to be right, He wouldn't dare lie to us. Would he not? Or are you just so programmed to see an individual as such a godlike state that you feel like it's impossible that this man of flesh and blood can fail? Now you show me anybody in the Bible, any patriarch and or apostle and or man of God that you want to title in the book that didn't err, and somehow or another you can't see it's possible that your man of God can do the same thing. Well, you just blinded. You're blinded. You refuse, I said this before, you refuse to accept what you already know. What do you know? I don't know specifically in the specifics of what he's done or the things that has happened, but you have a uneasy feeling. You have an uncertainty about things. That's enough right there. See, We have intuitive nudges. Those things tell us things that something's not right, or something didn't happen right, or something basically wasn't handled right. Those things are there. They're warning signs for us so that we can utilize them. And even if we don't know the whole story and know everything that's involved, it's there and it's in place to let you know that there's something else going on here. There's more to the stories. And I touched on it. You know, we don't want to know stories. We don't want to know stories. See, if the story is going to, the totality of a story and the truth of the story is going to impact our belief system, cognitive dissonance, here we go again. If it's going to impact our belief system, we don't want to deal with it. Oftentimes we'll make, restitution in our minds for, why something that shouldn't have happened. We'll justify it. Well, if, they wasn't doing X, Y, Z, then, that wouldn't have happened. Oftentimes an abuser, tell me this sounds familiar. Getting abused, maybe a woman, getting abused by a man, and you say, well, maybe if I had tried harder. Well, maybe if I had been better, or maybe if I had did, this a little bit better, then maybe he would have loved me. So we make the justification, and we, instead of looking at it for what it is, or if you're a man, well, maybe if I, bought her, more flowers, or, maybe if I had bought her, another dress, or maybe if I had bought her this automobile, she would have loved me more. So you take that, this cognitive dissonance has you to the place where you find yourself making excuses and you find yourself taking self-blame and accountability for someone else. This is what it is, people. This is what's going on in the church. And I'm breaking this down today on today's episode because a lot of things that I said in the first part, second part, may have been kind of, a lot of things were specific, but then this video, I'm just kind of breaking down the mindset. I touched on in the last video and I said, why is it that, members will continue in abuse? Because they don't see the abuse from their perspective as being abuse. Somehow it's not abuse. Do you know that you can be abused and not know that you're being abused? Did you think that abuse comes with some type of notification on the front end that says, hey, my pastor is getting ready to abuse me by psychologically using me and psychologically, taking scriptures and twisting them, psychologically, having me believe that he is greater than God or he's just as equal as great as God. We don't have any type of notification system in place that gives us forewarning to say, hey, you're about to be abused. You're about to step into a cult and you're going to be in this cult for a lifetime. Because the longer that you're in it, your mind, the longer that you are in it and the longer that you are exposed to it, the less you are as an individual. What do you mean? You have no mindset. Things that you could, on a dime, pick up. You start to lose those sensations. You start to lose that bit of intuitive nudge that you could quickly see things and call things out for what they were, because you have been so indoctrinated by an individual, not by the gospel. There's a difference. Indoctrinated by an individual that you have lost all natural and spiritual sense to really come to the place of awareness about things that you should be aware about. So we'll spend years and years in this. And slowly but surely you lose yourself. You lose yourself. You lose all sense of bearing. And then you find yourself at a place that, you can see something that's dead wrong. And you won't do and or say nothing. People, that is when you know that you are pretty much under a spell. When you are in a place, in a situation that you can look at something and you know that a person is either being treated wrong, has been treated wrong, or if it's revolving around yourself and you sit there and you don't say nothing, how can you say that you stand for anything when you'll accept anything? I mean, at some point you should have some degree of pride about, I don't care if it's not effectively, personally affecting you. If you're watching it and the injustice is happening to somebody else, why do we not say things about, what we see? You that comfortable in your religion, or you're that comfortable in your, I guess, relationship with God, that he himself has made your heart and has made your spirit so comfortable that you can see this injustice and indifference in people, and yet you sit there and you praise a God that you, I guess, that you feel like has, made this okay with you. Often I say, y'all need to wake up, members. You need to wake up. You need to wake up. A lot of you are asleep. You've been asleep. And some of you have been indoctrinated into this from your birth. So that's all you've ever known. You haven't even had the opportunity to even go out and experience other things, or experience other ministries, or experience another man, or this is all you've ever known. So you can't accurately assess situations because you got one perspective. Now, what's your way around that? What's your answer to that? Well, I hadn't been to different churches. Well, I haven't had but one pastor all my life. Well, my answer to you, ma'am or sir, is that in spite of maybe you didn't have different churches that you had to go to, or that you went to, maybe you didn't have but one pastor all your life. But one thing you do have the same system that everybody else has. Regardless of if you've been part of 5 churches or you've been part of one church all your life. You can talk to God. This was alluded to. Talk to God. We get offended by the messenger because we feel that the messenger has a bone to pick. I don't have no bone to pick. I'm just an individual that sees things. I'm an individual that knows things, and those things that I see and those things that I know, some of it I speak on, and then some of it I don't. Can't speak on everything that you know. But that I do know, that I do and will speak on, those are the things I speak on. But we get mad with the messenger. We feel like, oh, well, she's got a bone to pick. What makes you think that somebody, because they speaking up on something, somehow or another we want to, cognitive dissonance. We'd rather point to and say, oh, the reason why, he's saying what he's saying is because he just mad. He mad at my pastor. He had a situation happen, and he's just speaking on his experiences. Well, if you go to a restaurant, you get bad service, the food is bad, and you were overpriced for the meal that you was basically, the meal that you had, you was, overcharged for it. Okay? When you go and leave that restaurant and basically somebody that you come across, whether it's family member, friend, or whoever, foe for that matter, ask you about that relationship or that experience, are you going to fix it up, or are you going to tell it like it is? Well, some of us may fix it up. I don't know, depending on how tight we was with the restaurant owner. I guess it don't matter how they got treated while they were in there. The food could have been bad. They could have been overcharged, and y'all still to speak up and say, yeah, it's a good restaurant, they good. Cognitive dissonance, bad service, bad food, but you come on ahead and explain it away. Well, the service was just having a bad night. Yeah, well, you know what? They had ran out of quality meat in the kitchen, so they had to use some meat from, the less than normal grocery store we normally buy stuff from. So, they had to, get their food from another source. That's why it was bad. But it's a continuous thing. Every time you step in that restaurant, it's the same service, same bad food, and the list goes on. But we'll try to, put it off on the messenger as if somehow the messenger has an issue with the the restaurant itself. No, the messenger doesn't have an issue with the restaurant itself, because it's not in the restaurant. It's the management and it is the ownership of the restaurant that he has a problem with. And so these things reflect the ownership and the management of the restaurant. Those are the things you're speaking to. I can't blame the service. I can't blame, the waitresses. I blame the owner, because he's ultimately the one who's in control and who has ultimately the deciding factor in how that service and or experience is for the customer. So you take a pastor. He's ultimately responsible for these members and being brainwashed. Y'all sit there, y'all look at this man, you know that he's not right, things haven't happened, things are not happening right. Yet you sit there and let the man continue to serve these people this stuff, and walk right out knowing what this whole issue that I'm speaking on is the truth, but we'll just turn a blind eye to, and we don't want to see nothing. We don't want to hear nothing. Because it's always the other person. It's always the other person that's got the problem. Oh, they just didn't want to live right. Oh, they just wanted to do their own thing. Oh, they was just hard-headed. They didn't want to listen to, the pastor, or they didn't want to listen. Y'all remember sometimes amaze me. Y'all will come up with every cognitive dissonance. You come up with all kind of excuses for basically dismissing leadership's responsibility. Your pastor's deceptive. He lies and he's inconsistent about things. But that's all I've ever known. What I'm going to do, where I'm going to go. So we rationalize. Nobody's preaching the gospel like my pastor. So I got to basically, put up with all the other injustice. Well, listen to that. I mean, you'll sit up and watch a man do things that's inconsistent with the very thing that he's teaching. Love. Showing love. Showing things like mercy. Having grace. Same things that you require and basically expect of the Lord Jesus Christ. You see that this man that's basically your pastor doesn't extend to everybody equally across the pulpit. Just certain ones. I talked about a lot of this stuff. This is a psychological issue as well as spiritual. This is called abuse. And until we recognize these things for what they are, we'll continue with the revolving circle in these situations, week in and week out, going to church, doing church. I told y'all about it, doing church. When you get through with all of the shouting and you get through with all the, good times, and, after we get through, basically going through the motions of church, we go sit and eat some chicken and sit up and gossip about some folks, about what happened during the service, and laugh, and then turn around, go home, and wash, rinse, repeat. But this is God's program. This is God's program. Well, people, it's not God's program. It never has been. Until you can recognize abuse for what it is in a place, thing, or person, how can you know what the right thing is to do? You have to first recognize an abuser for who he is. You got to know the tactics of the enemy. You got to understand these things in your pastor, because if you don't, everything that drops from this man's lips is basically be like the gospel. Nothing you will say, nothing, everything. And sometimes we won't even pick up a Bible to even, collaborate what the man is saying. And if we do, we just look at it from page value. When I say page value, we're looking at the words on the page, we read it, and that's as far as we go with it. We don't try to have understanding or a godly understanding about things. We just go with what's interpreted over the pulpit, and that must be it. He's my man of God, so surely that must be it, what it means. Seeking out your own soul salvation is not contingent on whether or not you have a pastor. Oh, I know somebody will say, how can they hear without a preacher? Yeah, I got something for you too. There are many places in this world, there are many indigenous societies that don't have a pastor. But somehow or another, they're getting what they need to do. For the conscience sake, I guess that's where that come from. They ain't got no pastor standing in front, no pastor to stand in front of them. But they do have that. Okay? So, seeking out your own soul salvation doesn't mean you're sitting in the church and sitting in the building. Because a lot of people don't have access to a church. They don't have access to a building. It's about a one-on-one communication with you and your Creator. And through the Lord Jesus Christ, you are able to be restored unto Him. Not by a man and through a man, but by He, the Lord Jesus Christ. I touched on all of this. For those that haven't seen part 1 and part 2 of this Deceptive and Lying Pastors Do You Have One series, look at part 1 and part 2. This will basically, this right here that I'm talking about will solidify what you hear in those two parts, part 1 and part 2. It'll solidify all of what I'm saying now. See, being abused, I mean, you can accept it for what it is, or you can deny it. Cognitive dissonance, you can deny it. Make excuses for it. I talked about this earlier, Stockholm Syndrome. You actually love someone who's abusing you. You come to enjoy and come to love somebody that's abusing you. Think about that for a minute. I come to love, and I get to the place where I get so content in being abused that I will fight people that are basically trying to show me that, hey, you're being abused. If I see a man is lacing your drink with something that's going to kill you, and not, granted, it doesn't kill you all at once, but, you know, over a period of time, you know, this is ultimately going to end up in your death. And I see that a man is lacing your drinks, and I'm trying to tell you about that. Well, because you've had many drinks before and nothing has never happened to you, I guess that doesn't, you know, give you the mindset to think that, you know, well, let me check into what this man is saying. No, we don't think that. We just say, oh, I've had many drinks before. No harm was, you know, was brought to me. You know, I've drunk this man's, you know, drinks before, but I'm watching this man lace your drink. You don't have enough curiosity to even see if what I'm saying is true. So you get mad at the messenger because he's trying to tell you, hey, I've seen this individual, this is what they're doing, or I have something to tell you. I saw something regarding certain things, and I want to let you know what I know. But you don't want to know it. You don't want to know it. Stockholm Syndrome. You don't want to see it. You don't want to know it. You love the abuser. You love the individual that is basically trying to kill you, trying to hurt you, trying to harm you. How can you be in your right mind? So what do? We dismiss the whole messenger. We dismiss the whole message. Because you know what? I've gone this long, and surely, you know, if it was all that bad, then something would have happened by now. You're a very, 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 you're a naive individual. To feel and to think that, you know what, that you have not, and you will not be exposed to any danger because a certain thing hasn't happened in a certain past period of time, that somehow you are safe and you are in some type of safety net, that something won't happen to you. Because you fail, mind you, to look at something. So if I love you, am I going to tell you about a snake that's underneath a blanket that you're getting ready to, you know, pull up and jump in the bed? And would I say, hey, listen, there's a snake up underneath that bed, and then before I can get the, you know, words out, or I tell you, you know, there's a snake in your vicinity, and I know exactly where it's at and where it's going to be at, but you don't want to know it. You don't see something wrong with that? You see absolutely nothing wrong with the fact that, you know what, this could cost you your life. It's danger. It's dangerous to you or anybody else for that matter. But you feel like, you know, because I have a problem with snakes, you know, that I somehow, you know, all of a sudden I just want to, you know, talk about snakes. Well, let's take that out of the equation. If I did have a problem with snakes, does that negate the fact that there's still danger factor involved here? That snake gets you and bites you up underneath that cover, you're still going to be in trouble. Either way, there's danger there. So, whether I got a problem with snakes or not, there's still danger there. So you're going to dismiss the danger because I have problems with snakes? Oh, I can come at this issue any way you want. I'll still come out on top. Because the bottom line is, it all comes back to you, the members. When you get through with your excuses and you get through with your reasoning for dismissing the message or messenger, then you know what? It still doesn't change the danger factor. Because whether you see it now and what you're being told or whether you see it later on, you know, it doesn't change the danger factor. What's going to be is going to be. So, a lot of you all will sit under these deceptive and lying pastors. You'll continue to be abused, and you'll do it willingly, as I have said. We'll continue to willingly, you know, support an abusive system. And you know, the sad thing about that is you could really have so much better in life if you just simply wake up from the coma, spiritual coma that you're in. if you could actually see things for what they are and see a person for who he is and for who they have actually been, more importantly, for who they have actually been, a lot of you guys could release yourself. You guys are in what I call a spiritual prison by choice. You don't even realize the freedom and the liberty that you have and the power that you have to set yourself free. You don't even realize that power is within your own hands to set yourself free. But you'd rather be like the old slaves. We got the laws passed to free us from slavery, and that's all we've ever known. We was always comfortable in that mindset of just having enough to get by and depending on the slave master and staying on the slave master's property and working the slave master's land. And when we had the laws and we had the freedom to basically walk away and start afresh, what did we do? Most of us, not all of us, but most of us, we had been so indoctrinated into the slave mentality that no, slave master, we don't want to leave you. We want to stay right here. And so what slave master do? He gave you a little incentive. Well, you know what? Y'all been with me all these years. I'm going to give you a little piece of plot over here of land, and y'all can stay here and work the rest of your days out and spend the rest of your natural life here with me, working for me for free, basically. That's how we are in church. We got the freedom. We have the absolute freedom to set ourselves free. But we refuse to look at things. We refuse to see things for what they are. We don't want to look at it. That shock factor for knowing something for who and what it is so great. It's greater than our conscience can handle. That we'd rather just, cognitive dissonance, dismiss it and explain it off. We don't want to deal with it. We don't want to bother with it. Or we want to explain it off as being something else. Don't want to see the truth. Seeing the truth would actually put us at a place of accountability. And for a lot of us, because we are so dependent on a man, and we have been for so long, just like that example I just gave with the slave master. We've been dependent on that slave master for so long, pastor, for so long, that if we go outside of that building or outside of the territory of that land, then we're going to feel like we can't make it. So what do? We settle, we accept, and we stay. Well, I don't know about you all, but I can say this. Freedom, and I've said it before, is a wonderful thing. Sometimes in life, taking a stand will cause you to stand alone. And if you can't stand alone on what's called right, then there's really no hope for you standing in or standing up for anything that has to do with the word right. Because the first right has to be within yourself. You have to know, and within yourself, know that everything that you basically are fighting for, everything that you call yourself standing for in defense of, quote unquote, the gospel's sake, if that was really what you were standing for, the gospel's sake, then the things that the gospel speaks of, you would basically stand for those things and all things that the gospel talks about. Liberty and justice for every man. There's no respect of persons in the kingdom. I don't care who it is. But you can honestly say and look in this camera and tell me that in your establishment, that everything that you see your pastor doing, the bad pastors, again, we're talking about the bad pastors. You can't tell me everything you see your pastor doing has been straight by the book and fair, straight up the middle of the aisle for every member in there. You've seen many unjust situations happen. You've seen many people be treated wrong. And you won't say nothing because it's much safer for you to feel, quiet about issues and be quiet on things than to stand up and actually be different. Stand up and be what the God you shouting and you speaking in tongues about, and rolling on the floor about, actually requires of you to do. Stand. We won't stand. We'll sit and let a dictator, let an individual who calls himself our pastor beat us down. And we love it. We love it. In fact, we cherish it. We'll get up and thank an abuser for abusing us. And at the end of the day, go home and feel like you've accomplished something and somehow God's going to be pleased with you and that he is pleased with you. And yet you're sitting there, and I've said it and I alluded to it in the last video. You're wondering why nothing in life moves for you. Nothing in life is moving for you. No situations. You've been in a church 20 and 30 and 40, 50 years, and no significant change in your life that you can point to that has happened. I'm not talking about just, just off the top of your head, oh, the Lord blessed me to get a job. Okay, great. People get jobs every day. Okay, so you got another car. All right, people get new cars every day. But speaking about things from a spiritual perspective, has God given you a spiritual awareness about things? Has he opened your eyes spiritual? Or are you still around here trying to get this and hopefully get this big testimony that's going to get up in the church and talk about some big materialistic blessing that you got by being in a building with a man that you say is a man of God, that he's the only one in the world God talking to? This is what, I mean, come on, people. Come on. At some point, some of us went through 12 years of schooling. We went through some years of college. I just have to, talk to the individual that's looking at this video and assume that you have at least a 6th grade education. And if you do, you don't need, a spiritual degree in theology in order to see and hear these things and know that, it's just common sense. Certain things is just common sense. You don't need any degrees in theology or go to school to get some type of degree to understand this. An abuser is an abuser. Naturally, spiritually, they're both the same. Just that one is even actually, to be quite frank with you, one is actually worse. A natural abuser, and that in itself is bad enough. But when you take a spiritual abuser, he's like twice that, because now you're looking at somebody that not only, is operating under the guise of, being an abuser, but then now he's using God and using the system of spirituality to basically, abuse an individual and take advantage of their lack of knowledge. So you'll sit there and you'll just, whatever you're fed, you'll eat it. And again, I just, started on that a minute ago. You wonder why nothing has happened for you. You spent years in a building all your life and things are not progressing for you. You wonder why you're always depressed. You wonder why your mind is always mentally conflicted. You wonder why you can't think straight. That's called oppression. Oppression, where is it coming from? It's coming from the actual place of knowing things about the ministry and knowing things about your pastor that are deceptive, have been deceptive over the years. Things that you've seen operate through your pastor that was inconsistent. All those things. Do you really actually believe that God just dismissed all of that? And that somehow he forgot about all of that? And you all are suffering, the members, you're sitting there and you're wondering why you come to church sometimes you feel so heavy. Oh, you'll be told that, you need to get rid of your sinful nature, this, that, and yada, all the other stuff that he can tell you about. The problem is on you. It ain't him and his life and how he been living that has brought this on to the church and the people. No, you'll be told that, it's you ain't doing this and X, Y, Z, and, the problem is with you. But you have such a burden. You all have such a heaviness on you. You can't function during the course of the week. Sometimes you want to sit up and just sleep all the time. You want to know why you're depressed and why you can't get your thoughts together and get your sense of bearing together. And nothing in life is working for you. You feel mentally conflicted. You find yourself drinking and smoking and doing all sorts of things. You turn to women, you turn to men. Nothing can scratch that itch. And you wondering why. I'm in the church and why is all this happening? I told y'all, once y'all stop looking through the eyes of the natural and you start looking through the eyes of the spiritual, you'll start to see some things that may shock you. But you know what? If it shock you into good, and it shock you into awareness, and it shocks you into the right way, then so be it. Let it shock you till it drop you to the ground. Some of you need a shock therapy. You need to be shocked into reality, both spiritually and naturally. Because you've been in this sleep for so long. You can't figure out why it is the place I come to and I don't have any liberty in my mindset. Psychologically, I'm conflicted. I know why. It's because you've accepted what you know about something and you refuse to open your mouth about it. Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. You won't say a one solemn word. Pastor ain't been to nobody over the years, and he has successfully been able to carry his con on with the same 40, 50 folks for 30 and 40 and 50 years. And you want to wonder why nobody has joined your establishment in church. You don't have a membership. God ain't going to send nobody somewhere to be damned. They would be better off being in the world than to come and be exposed to some of the dark, secret, twisted spirits that are in some of y'all's churches. God wouldn't be that unmerciful to no man to send them to some place where your pastor done every God-forsaken thing that he could think to do. And it's been kept secret, and y'all have taken covenants as members to keep your pastor's secret and dark deeds unknown. You think that's the reason why? You got 40 and 50 members at any one place, or any time you see the church semi get full is when you have somebody else come there to the church, as rare as that is. But God is not sending nobody to a place or a building where he's basically speaking and talking. There's many souls that need to be saved. Y'all think because nobody wants the gospel. I talked about all this. That is not it, people. That is not it. It's not because people don't want the gospel. God is actually protecting people. That is why they are not sent to your place of worship. God is not going to send any man and or woman, boy or child, to a place that is full of iniquity in the history of the church, that was founded on iniquity. And if he sends anybody there, he's going to send them there for school. That's right. Sometimes you can be sent to places because it was a season that you needed to be there, so that God could school you on certain things. You have to know that too, because you can go to some of these places and be sent to churches sometimes, and you think about all the God-forsaken things that happened there and the things that was going on, and you come into the awareness and God starts to show you things about the history of the church, and then you think to my goodness, wow, why would God send me here? You was on an assignment. God had a mission for you. So in those exceptions, yes, sometimes you will be sent for your schooling, for God to show you things, for God to teach you things. But for the rest of you, I'm talking to all of you. Yes, you, ma'am, you, sir, that's been in the ministry all your life. You've seen this history start from a nothing and grow all the way up 30 and 40, 50 years later, and you hadn't seen nothing significant happen and or change. What, you got a new building? That's your big change you want to talk about? What is a building? And then when you go into that building, what difference does it make how new the building is if you the old wine going into a new building? You still going in with the same thoughts, you still going in with the same awareness, you still going in with the same knowledge about your pastor into this new building. What's supposed to change? You think God's going to be a part of that? No, he's not. You can't make it cognitive dissonance. You can't make an excuse for what your pastor did 30 and 40, 50 years ago. Can't do it. Well, nobody's perfect. Yeah, nobody's perfect. Okay. Yeah, well, we've all sinned and come short. Yeah, we've all sinned and come short of the glory of God. Yeah, well, nobody can, point the finger. No, nobody can point the finger, at nobody. Okay, we get through with all of that. We still have an awareness. We've still accepted iniquity, And we have somehow made it a program that's acceptable for these pastors to basically, no matter what they do, they can do everything. They can murder, they can kill, they can be pedophiles, they can basically be adulterers, they can basically, backbite, lie, and do everything else. They can involve themselves with incest with their family members, their daughters, their cousins. And somehow or another, it's okay. God has forgiven all. Yeah. Perhaps he has. However, there is a responsibility for you as a member to open your mouth and cry aloud and spare not. Because if you have that type of respect of persons because your pastor has got so much favor with you that it would keep your mouth shut and that you would keep your mouth closed, but then you will speak up on somebody else's stuff that you either know about or in some cases you know nothing about, but you will open your mouth to that, then God's going to judge you by that very thing. You would speak up on somebody else's sin. You would speak up on something else that you know about somebody else that's not a pastor, but you wouldn't say anything about what you know about your pastor. No, you kept that in your, as they say, lock and key for 20 and 30 and 40 years, 50 years. We kept that under lock and key. We don't want to speak on that. Well, that's what you're going to be judged by. You spoke up on everybody else and everything else that you thought you knew about, and perhaps some things you did know about. You spoke on that, but when it came to your pastor, I gonna say nothing. Boy, y'all gonna be in for a rude awakening. Rude awakening. You're gonna be woken up rudely. And when you are woken up rudely, you're gonna be rudely looking at things from a perspective of, you know what? I thought that I got away with this if I keep my mouth shut and I said God would deal with it, but it's going to be put right back on you. It's going to be sitting in your lap with them eyes open on the spiritual side. That thing that you said, oh, that was God's business that you knew about, it's going to be sitting in your lap when you open them eyes on the spiritual side. It's sitting right there. God's going to be looking at you. That wasn't on me. I can see God if I could imagine him. No, that wasn't on me. That was on you. You knew it. You didn't want to say anything. Somehow or another, you associated speaking up on the truth as, equating I was going to destroy you. I talked about all this stuff. If what I'm saying, a lot of you all that are seeing this part 3, it doesn't make much sense to you, it's not going to. Because this is deep. What I'm talking about here, this is deep stuff. This is on the natural side as well as spiritual. You have to go back and look at part 1 and part 2 to get and grasp this. And in fact, you can go back as far as look at my videos and look at effective communication brings about true resolves and not deceptive ones. Start there. That'll give you a lineage and a history to walk up to this video right here. And all of this will start to make sense to you. But for you members, I told you all, y'all need to get yourselves at a place where you start holding these pastors in accountability, and you need to step outside of this fear. Some of you right now looking at this video, you know there's things that you need to say. There's people that you know that you did wrong because of something your pastor said and or did influence that person and how you see that person. Yet you know in your spirit that you have to correct some things, but you're not going to do it and budge because what? You feel conflicted by what others will think and or say if you do. That's your loss. What do you mean it's your loss, John? It's your loss because whether it's just a simple peace of mind that you will have by you simply holding on to this, what you know that you need to do, by you going on ahead and doing what you need to do, the peace of mind that comes behind that, you would rather go on ahead and have conflict, and you'd rather sit up sleepless nights and sit up and think about things that you should have done, would have done, and should do, but because of the fear that you have for others who may judge you, I guess, you will continue to sit up and have your sleepless nights and conflict and emotional and mental anguish. Boy. My goodness, freedom's looking dead at you in the camera. And you don't even know it. All you got to do is move. All you got to do is move. Be bold enough to take a step towards freedom. I guarantee you. You take one step, you'd be amazed on what will open up for you. But just like salvation, God doesn't force us to do anything. He's not going to force you to do what is right and what you know is right to do in your spirit. So you have to take that and you have to deal with that. If that's something and that is a price that you are willing to pay, to sit on what you know you need to do and not do it because of what others are going to think and or say about you, well, maybe it's fine time that you turn over a new leaf and take a stand. Take a stand for what? Take a stand for truth. Whose truth? Your truth. Whose truth? The truth of God. Whose truth? The truth that has been the truth, always was the truth, and nothing that you have said and or have done up to this point is going to change the truth. You can deny it, you can ignore it, it's not going to change the truth. So, what's today's challenge? Well, I challenge you, stand up for what you know is the truth. When you do that, that's when you're going to be liberated. That's when you're going to stop having those depressing moments. That's when you're going to stop having that mental turmoil. That's when you're going to stop having those sleepless nights. That's when you're going to stop having those fearful thoughts of somebody's looking at you or somebody's going to get you or something's going to happen to you. All that's going to leave you when you stand up and take a stand for the truth. See, if you're afraid of what man can do, then you know what? My goodness, what's God even in your vocabulary for? If you're afraid of what a man can do, why even go to church? I said this before. Why go to church? The man obviously is bigger than God to you, in that you feel that what he says and what he does is more important and more influential than you talking to God yourself and basically getting answers for yourself. Seems like a bad deal when I assess it. That's a bad deal. I tell you what, you can do what you want to do, but at the end of the day, you have a choice to make. You're going to continue the rest of your life living in fear. You're going to continue the rest of your life standing and watching injustice and knowing things that you know about situations that haven't played out, that you've witnessed and things that you saw. Are you going to continue to sit on that? You're going to spend the rest of your days thinking about what I should have, what I could have done, if I only had said X, Y, Z. You're going to spend the rest of your days being in regret, being sorrowful. Oh, if the freedom that you knew that you had, if you only knew it. If you only knew it. But you, ma'am, you, sir, have got to step through the doors. To you, I give you the keys. Use them. Unlock the lock. Open the door. You'd be amazed what's on the other side. That being said, that's all I've got for today. So hopefully you guys have gathered something here. Again, this is not personal, but I have stated in the previous videos, I'm a man that has many experiences, both personally and spiritually. I have much church history, been a part of many organizations, and I've been afforded the opportunity to experience and see many things. And it is fine time that these members start holding these pastors in accountability for the no good, sorry individuals that they are. And perhaps you want to have a hero and champion so bad that it's more acceptable for you to keep quiet than to diminish and or taint this perfect illusion that you've been riding for so many years. Well, again, people, do you want freedom? If you do, it's available. You want deliverance? If you do, it's available. You want understanding? If you do, it's available. You want to be unshackled? If you do, it's available. You want to go to the next level? If you do, it's available. All right, y'all, I'm done. That being said, y'all have a great day, and I'll be back and I'll be continuing some of this stuff. And we'll be doing some more talking on it. But I've given you something again to chew on. Hopefully that you take this and you will let this marinate. Let it just really just penetrate in your mind and basically take what's being said. Try it. See, won't you get a different result? I guarantee you will. I know you will. Until next time, peace. I'm out.